Does Josephus actually mention Jesus? Well, yes, he does it twice. In this video, we'll only be looking at the shorter passage, which is in Book 20 of Antiquities. Now, what this passage tells us is that the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, his name was James, and this is really dealing with the death of James. Jesus here is only mentioned as an identifier as to who this James was. Now, the vast majority of scholars believe that this passage is authentic, but there are few people who say that it is, in fact, an interpolation, and we'll discuss why they think that is. So, the first argument that they have is that this phrase would have needed some type of cross reference, because they would have had to have explained why Jesus was called Christ. Now, this is simply false. Later on in Book 20, we actually have another example that is very similar to this James passage. Now, this one talks about a Joseph who was called Cabo. Why is he called Cabo? We have no idea because Josephus never actually tells us. We have other examples of this as well. For instance, Josephus mentions a group of 10 men who were called the Freemen. Why are they called the Freemen? We have absolutely no idea. So the idea that this would have needed some type of cross-reference doesn't make sense when we actually look at Josephus. He doesn't always explain why people have different nicknames or why places have different nicknames. Another objection to this passage is that it appears that Josephus is calling Jesus Christ, but that's not what he's doing. Josephus is simply telling us that other people called him Christ, and we know that is what other people called him. Now, there's a few things that we have to remember here. The audience for this work, for the Antiquities of the Jews, was not Jewish people, but Greeks. So they may not have actually put together Christ and Messiah, because the term Christ can mean other things. Now, Josephus does use the word Christ in one other area. That's in Book 8 of Antiquities, and there it means plastered. Now, this doesn't refer to a modern sense of the word plaster where someone has drinking too much. Instead, it's talking about a roof having been plastered. So, for a Greek to read this verse that he was called Christ, it would have been something like he was called plastered or he was the plastered one. It doesn't necessarily mean the Messiah to a Greek speaking audience who doesn't have that religious background. And yeah, that name sounds weird, but that kind of happens a lot within the ancient world. We have weird names. I mean, we can just look at Cicero and see that his name means chickpea. So having these odd names wasn't something that was uncommon. We also have no literary evidence that this is interpolation or that it said anything besides what it says today. So when we actually look at the evidence for this passage, we can be certain that it in fact did mention Jesus. It doesn't mention much about Jesus, but it does mention Jesus.